Welcome to Yeukai Business Show, UK's premier business show where we feature business thought leaders, high achievers, and industry experts. Today's episode is brought to you by World Outsourcing Solutions Limited, a company that specializes in helping executive business owners with virtual assistant services and business growth systems. Here's your host.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. It's Trevor here with you again today. Now, you're going to really enjoy this episode. I know you are. You always do. But our guest is really special because she can help us increase our self-confidence and overcome the challenges that we face in life. So whether that's in business or any of the other areas of our life. Sandy's a communications expert, and I don't know whether you've thought about writing a book yet, whether you've got that inside of you. If you're not quite sure you have, maybe by the end of our discussion today, that might be a bit stronger, because she's also written a book which we're going to dig into. Find out lots about that. But yeah, just stay tuned, stay open to the idea that maybe you'll become an author at some point. Who knows? Anyway, so a couple of other areas of expertise that Sandy's got. She's an interpreter. She's also a video host. And as I mentioned, she's the author of a book. It's called Choose to Prevail, which I think is such a good title. So welcome, Sandy Rodriguez.
Thank you so much, Trevor. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and thank you for the lovely introduction.
You're welcome. You sound like a very fascinating lady, actually, with many talents. So it's great to have you on the show today. Maybe before we dig into the book, as excited as I am to do that, maybe just fill in some of the story of Sandy that got to the point of writing the book, because I know you did have quite a major career change and amongst other things. So maybe can you tell us a bit about that first?
I absolutely would love to. Here's the thing, Trevor. For a very long time, I would say over a period of 16 years, I worked for one of the major newspapers in Latin America. I was an editorial coordinator for this newspaper by the name of Reforma, based in Mexico City. And let me tell you, I loved my job. I can't say enough good things about it. To me, it was wonderful. However, I did have to make a number of compromises and trade-offs in order to actually be able to work in this field. Because as you can imagine, keeping up with the news cycle in any form of media is difficult, and certainly more so in newspapers. There's never the option of saying, I'll just put this off until tomorrow, or I'll see about this next week. No. It has to be done, and it has to be done now. So it wouldn't be unusual for me to work a 14-hour day, a 16-hour day, an 18-hour day, which is something that I'm sure many of the people in your audience can also relate to. But here's the thing. At that point, I wasn't doing any kind of entrepreneurial activity, thinking about the possibility of having any kind of business of my own would be unthinkable. There really is not enough time in the day, and that was just not something I had even considered. It wasn't even on my radar. But the thing is that even though I really did enjoy my job at the newspaper, a number of things happened in my personal life, very specifically the deaths of my father and my brother, that led me to think that I needed a little bit more time to spend with people, because I was really doing nothing except for working. That was basically my main and exclusive focus. So I chose to move to Los Angeles, which is, it's still a big city, of course. It's a far smaller city than Mexico City. The pace is more laid back. And I began working in a field that I'm also very passionate about, which is court interpreting. It's very fascinating. And the main upside of this field is that it's done in real time. Unlike any other fields, you don't need to wait to see the fruits of your labor. You do the activity, you interpret for the person in real time, in the now, and you are done. So even though my work is demanding, it's a full-time job, it's an in-person job also, which is interesting in this day and age when so many things are done remotely. But by 6 p.m, I'm home, which actually gave me time, Trevor, to do so many things that I otherwise would not have been able to, including writing a book, which you kindly mentioned, and doing other activities that somehow became sources of income in and of themselves. For example, painting. I became an artist. I started selling a few paintings. Winemaking also. I'm still at an amateur level, but it's a very fascinating hobby. So in the end, I ended up building, should I say, what ended up becoming a small business by virtue of having written a book. I wrote this book because I wanted to. Making money off of it was not my main focus, but things kind of grew. They took on a life of their own, and now we're doing many things that are book related that can only be described as the activities of a small business. So that's it.
It's a fascinating journey. And yeah, I find it always encouraging. Like, as you say, a lot of the listeners are probably in that point of working too many hours a day than they really want to, but in order to get momentum going, to keep things going, particularly if they're kind of more sole traders or small teams, they have to do a lot more work themselves. But it's interesting that you've managed to shift from that step of faith, step of courage, I would say, in lots of ways, particularly changing location as well, changing countries, cultures. But you've lived through it. And now you're able also to kind of share some of your experiences, some of the things that got you through it to a place where you're a lot more successful now. It sounds like you're building an empire. So, kudos to you for that. I think keep going, definitely. they're all areas that you enjoy doing, aren't they? So they're an expression of who you are, rather than, let's try and make money. What's the next thing that's selling or doing? I'll jump on that. It's like, no, because I know authenticity is very important to you, and all the things that you're involved with is just a natural outworking of who you are. So yeah, I think that's a really good place to start from. But what was some of the challenges that you kind of had to go through, maybe changing countries as well as career?
Well, I think it was many things at the same time. I had lived in the United States when I was younger, but the experience of living in a country as a child and the experience of living in a country as an adult are vastly different. So I did have to undergo a number of, shall we say, fish out of water situations in addition to finding, a new field to move into and a number of things. But here's the thing, Trevor. I think that going back to what we have been talking about both before we began recording and after we began recording about how sometimes challenges lead to better outcomes. I think that I myself have often been an outsider in many ways. When I was little, my family and we lived in different countries. I changed schools a few times, and certainly now moving from one country and city to another, it always gives you a little bit of an outsider perspective. Now, here's the thing. On one hand, that can be considered a liability rather than an asset because, well, you feel, okay, people will consider me strange or weird or that I don't understand their culture or this and that. But in all honesty, that little strangeness or thing that is a little bit different about you does give you an edge in many situations. For instance, maybe when I was a teenager, I was not pleased about not being able to fit in completely at my school, for instance. But when I started a career in journalism, the reality of the thing is that an unusual perspective is often very prized. And I think that that little bit of an outsider perspective was very helpful for me in actually building a career in journalism, simply by virtue of looking at things from a different angle. And I've spoken with many business owners, and they do mention that something that might have seemed a challenge or a problem at some point actually ended up being for the best. Perhaps they had wanted to go into a specific line of work and that was just not available to them, which led them down a different path. In my case, when I moved here to LA, that was a very specific point in history, important in the media, because it was precisely when a lot of content started being offered for free, by which I mean bloggers and other content creators. And to be honest, many of the types of content that were being offered were high quality, they were interesting. And while that is wonderful for might not have been as wonderful for somebody like myself that needed to find gainful employment in the field that we were already in, right?
Yeah.
But that led me to discover chord interpreting, and I might not have even explored that avenue had there been, let's say, media opportunities that were exactly what I was looking for at the time. Not to say that I didn't find it. I was invited on many interesting projects, but let me put it this way: they could not necessarily have been considered gainful employment, but rather hobbies. Interesting, no doubt, but definitely I needed something more stable. And interpreting gave me that security while allowing me to find a career path that's just, I mean, it's to me, it's fantastically interesting. And it has given me that little bit of extra time to work on personal projects as well.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. I know there was a quote that you've said, "What makes you unique makes you irreplaceable," and I think there's huge value in realizing that our own stories are unique. We are unique individuals. A lot of the time, we have certain similarities, but yeah, we bring out our own flavor, don't we? Our own perspective on different things, and you've got a very good way of kind of reframing things. So, like you say, it's either a good thing or a bad thing that you're classed as an outsider or seen as an outsider or feel like an outsider. Um, Tell us a bit more about the mindset side of things, because we always, on lots of different shows, we ask guests about mindsets because I think it's such a key thing. I'm a coach myself, so I understand the liberty of a good mindset and the limitations of a bad one. That's why I have a coach as well. But I think it's a day-to-day thing with mindset a lot of the time. But there's certain habits and things that we can put into practice to maybe shift our perspective, like you say, or just take a potentially bad situation but reframe it in a positive way. So what brought you to that point where you saw things that way?
I think, firstly, that unfortunately, I have been a person that has undergone a number of, let's say, major tragedies. I would say so, definitely, and larger challenges. I would say things as extreme, perhaps, as I was mentioning, the loss of my younger brother, or, for instance, my one of my closest female friends. She was killed during a vacation. That was something very shocking to me. I myself have also been a crime victim. These are things that are terrible, and certainly I wouldn't say that I would recommend undergoing anything of this nature. But I think all of us in our lives have some degree of tragedy or some degree of challenge, be it as to health, as money, romance, even. There has to be, unfortunately, a little bit of pain in everybody's life. Now, certainly, I wouldn't say, oh, it's wonderful that we have these experiences and let's be grateful for that. Of course not. That would be very insensitive and certainly uh, it wouldn't make sense. However, when we do undergo things of that nature, I think we can definitely put minor annoyances into perspective. After one has undergone something tremendously trying, let's say that one day you find a situation where, let's say, somebody unsubscribes from your email newsletter. I mean, sure, that's annoying, but that's not definitely a tragedy. It's something very, very minor. And I feel that people sometimes it's that they just haven't been through enough yet, or that they have, but they kind of forgot. And then when they hit the smallest of problems in their business, in their personal life, or in any circumstance, it's like tremendously horrifying for them. Sometimes you see people going, I'm stuck in traffic. This is such a tragedy. I'm going to be 10 minutes late to this thing that I wanted to go to. And certainly that's not ideal. I mean, certainly it could be better, but it's not a big deal. It really isn't. And it's very important to not turn minor annoyances into tragedies because they really are not. That's one thing. And the other thing is that in general, we do need to keep in mind that having a positive outlook might not guarantee success, but having a tremendously negative outcome will most likely guarantee a poor outcome. That's the very fact, because having a very negative outcome holds us back much more than we believe. And it's something that happens. For example, when I made my big career shift, yes, indeed, it was a leap of faith. It certainly was, even though I did have a plan in place. I had done this strategically, moving toward the day that I would say goodbye to my old company. I had planned that in advance, etc. But still, it was a leap of faith. If I had not believed that it was even possible, it would have been a terrible situation. I would have been trapped. I wouldn't have even done it, or I would have left my job with tremendous trepidation and was searching for new employment. Maybe I would have done so by feeling already defeated and maybe without showing any confidence in the fact that I could do something different. It simply would not have worked out. I'm positive of that. The other thing, lastly, Trevor, is understanding that sometimes things that seem to be difficulties or challenges are somehow blessings in disguise and might guide us to something better, either by virtue of protecting us from something that wouldn't have been right for us, or actively leading us to a totally different outcome. Often there are chains of incidents or bridges of events that, however unrelated they may seem, might guide us to the desired outcome. And this happens both in business and in life. And I think your listeners can think of examples in their own life, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. So your book, Choose to Prevail, what was the inspiration behind the title to start with?
I'm so glad that you liked the title itself. I believe that we do have more of a sense of agency than we believe that we do. It's true that circumstances exist, and that's undeniable, but the way we choose to respond to the circumstances is entirely up to us. And again, not to say that we are the sole force in the universe and that we are entirely the makers of our fate, but to a very large degree, we do have control. We do have a possibility of guiding our life in a very specific direction. Let me give you an example, and perhaps this is something that many business owners out there will relate to. The COVID situation. Okay, putting aside health concerns and putting outside the loss of, let's say, life or health that many have experienced, has been for some businesses actually favorable, in all honesty. For some of them, it has been terrible, unquestionable. Many have had to shut down. Many people have lost their jobs. That is true. But for some businesses, it has been actually a growth opportunity. And I'm thinking in terms of, for instance, fitness companies that offered workouts on demand, for example. I can't picture a better scenario for them. Um, Companies that were able to transition quickly into online only mode, that were nimble enough, that had the foresight, that had the infrastructure in place to do that. I mean, it couldn't have come at a better time. Again, not to minimize the tremendous consequences that COVID has had on many, both financially and health-wise. But the truth is that something positive can come out of a terribly negative situation if we figure it out. For example, when I wrote my book, um, again, I wasn't writing it necessarily for money. That was not really what was on my mind. I wrote it more to help friends and readers in general. But the reality is that I wanted to have a nice book launch. That had been my plan, having a nice party, nice cocktail party. I had even given it some thought, seeing that I'm a winemaker. Also, I had thought, okay, I'll make some special wine for the occasion and do a book signing. I had my plan in place. But well, the reality is that COVID struck and I was left with a decision to make. Postpone the book launch, not even have a book launch. So what am I going to do? I thought, okay, so then I figured, okay, let's have it online. But here's the thing, a lot of people were doing online book launches and doing them in a very informal way, maybe at their kitchen table from Zoom. Not to say that that's a bad thing, because again, it's you have to be resourceful. But I thought, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of the resources that I was going to pour into a live launch into an online launch. if a certain amount of, let's say, money was going to be allocated, or energy was going to be allocated, or teamwork was going to be allocated, let's do that and do it online. So I got in touch with this company that I often work with, which is called Heart of Hollywood, based here out of California. And they helped me carry out something that was actually, I think, beyond my expectations. We had a book launch that was televised from a green screen studio here in Burbank. And it was basically a live TV show, to which we also added a Zoom component for interaction with the audience. We had a sommelier and wine and spirits consultant prepare special cocktails that were inspired by the book. We sent out our viewers the recipes in advance so that they could have their drink in hand. We did that. Then we also had a team of musicians create special music for the show. It was original music, which is fantastic because of the duet that ended up composing this music was a Grammy contender and her rock star boyfriend. So that was also very nice. Then we had international guests. That was possible because of the virtual component. So we had guests come in from Canada and from Mexico also to discuss their experiences with the book. And it ended up being wonderful. We did international giveaways. We gave out t-shirts. We gave out books. It was just a very, very wonderful experience. And in fact, I received a surprise while on the show. One of our guests was this economist that felt that the book had been helpful to him in business because it helped him build his confidence. And he liked it so much that he announced on the show that he is currently finding investors for a program where people will invest in individual trees, and these are precious timber trees. I believe it's cedar, it's I believe it's oak, and a third type of tree. So in any case, their investors will be their first 1,000 investors will be receiving a copy of my book. So that was a nice surprise for me. I wasn't expecting him to make that offer, but that was very, very kind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a very inspiring story because, as you say, we can't control everything. We do have a lot more power than we sometimes realize or allow ourselves. You could have sat back, like you say, just, okay, let's cancel everything. Let's just put it on pause. But once you started, you've made the decision that you're going to do it. And then as you start, kind of momentum builds, and activity is such a key thing, isn't it? I think even if we don't fully know where we're going, once we start, the path just becomes a lot clearer a lot of the time. So, no, that's really good. I can understand why he was inspired by your book. I pulled out a couple of quotes that people have said about reading your book. So, the self-help book we need in these tough times. And this is my favorite one. Reading Choose to Prevail is like having coffee with a friend, or having coffee with a kind, insightful, and endlessly patient friend. I think that's really good. So certainly would recommend everybody to get the book. But also, you mentioned, you kind of touched on self-confidence, and it'd be nice to kind of plumb your expertise and your experiences in how do we maybe not, well, either develop, I suppose, or I think to some level, being an entrepreneur, business owner, you have a certain level of self-confidence anyway, although that can get kind of chipped away with bad experiences or whatever. Any tips on how we can either develop in the first place or just maintain and build self-confidence?
Absolutely. I think the first thing is to not be afraid of being ourselves. I think that's a two-part thing. Firstly, it has to be, understood in theory and then actually put into practice. That's the main thing. Sometimes we want to be accepted by a certain group or a certain clique or even by a certain type of customer, I think, for business owners. And you think, okay, I don't want to show off the more unusual sides to my personality or certain things because I might not be accepted. I might be thought of as weird or strange, or, I see people in my field and they look a certain way, or they all market themselves a certain way, or they all do things in this particular way. And you don't want to be, you don't want to stick out like a sore thumb. You want to blend in. Now, that is something that many of us do both when we're very young in our private lives and also when we're starting out in careers, because we're not, we're not trusting ourselves fully yet. We have a lot of self-doubt is what I believe. Now, trying to blend in or striving to blend in, well, it can work initially up to a certain point. I mean, certainly you won't make waves. You will indeed be accepted in a school or a social circle or a neighborhood or a field within business. But here's the thing, sooner or later, you're either going to become completely forgettable because you will become very, very bland and very uninteresting and uninspiring, or even worse, the fact that you feel stressed out and strained by trying to pretend will come and bite you back because people will think you look shady or confusing or fake or in some way not the right person to have either as a friend or as a business associate. So in reality, doing that is not the best course of action. The best course of action is having the confidence of being who you are, of being who you are. Now, it's interesting here because sometimes when we picture confidence or a confident, okay, maybe it's somebody that's loud and brash, or maybe it's somebody that has this cool and quiet confidence, or maybe we might have our own mental picture. Now, here's the thing, confidence has different looks, it has a different appearance depending on who you are. Confidence to me is allowing yourself to be who you are, no matter what that may be. If being yourself to you means being an introvert and not speaking at all, that's confidence. If you have the confidence to say, I don't like small talk and I'm settling there in the corner, whether you like it or not, that's confident. That's a power move. I mean, I know it sounds very strange because it sounds like, no, that doesn't sound like what I picture when I think confidence. But confidence looks like whatever it looks like to you. If you, for instance, have an unusual hobby, an unusual point of view, a very unique perspective on something, a controversial opinion on something that's very polarizing, no matter what the case may be, if you're confident, you won't hide it. Maybe you won't go out of your way to express something, but you won't be hiding it necessarily. Now, that has its upsides and its downsides. The downside is that you will not appeal to everyone. The upside is that you will appeal, and very much so, to your tribe, to your class, to the people that you will make a difference for. Definitely. I mean, the only way to avoid offending anyone or the only way to not displease anyone is to be utterly forgettable. Utterly forgettable. And that's not what you want. You don't want it in your personal life. You certainly do not want it in business. So even a hint of being vaguely polarizing, even a hint of being a little strange or a little different is always better than none of that. And having the confidence to let that show makes a world of a difference. Now, the way to actually implement that is to implement that. Start small. Just express an opinion in a group of friends that might not have expressed in the past and see how that goes. Certainly, you'll see exactly what happens. Some people might say, oh, I wasn't expecting that, and I don't like it. But many will say, I wasn't expecting that, and I do like it. So it's just very interesting.
That's really good. Yes, I'm jotting notes as you're saying all of that. I'm getting inspired and jotting some notes down. So thank you for that. That's really good. You mentioned as well, you kind of have a strong desire or belief that you feel everyone should write a book, or a lot more people should dig into themselves and start expressing, which kind of wraps up into if you're confident with who you are, then you're more likely to take the step of kind of advertising yourself or telling your story to a wider audience. What would be some of the kind of pointers that if somebody's maybe listened to us for the first time and thought, man, actually, maybe I will write a book, or maybe I could, maybe somebody would actually want to read about my story. my journey so far. What would be some of either the lessons that you learned in you starting to write, or although you've been writing for many years, or what would be the first steps that they could take towards writing a book?
I think that the very first step would be of course, to be excited about the idea. If it's something that speaks to you, definitely explore that. Of course, it's not for everyone, but many people do have that little desire. Maybe it's on their bucket list, or maybe it's something they've thought about. So that would be thing number one, just having the wish to do so. The second step, I would say, Trevor, is to decide what you want to get out of it. For many people in your specific audience, I think writing a book could be a fabulous way of strengthening an existing brand, or even building up a brand that is only just starting out. For instance, I'm thinking right now of people that have, for instance, fitness or food companies. Sometimes their company offers books authored by the owner, for instance, or the CEO, and they're wonderful. They're not necessarily overly promotional. They're just interesting books that people might gravitate towards, and that's very helpful for the brand. I'm reminded right now of the Bulletproof brand, and that's something that they do, and I like that, Bulletproof coffee. I'm also thinking about the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that pretty much established himself as as a thought leader in his specific field as a result of writing these books. Interestingly enough, I believe that he was self-published. And that's interesting because there might still be, to some degree, a vague stigma about self-publishing. I'm not sure about going down that road. But in all honesty, in this day and age, I think that you can find wonderful books that are traditionally published and wonderful books that someone chooses to publish on their own. The quality might be comparable. Um, Mainly, the difference at this point in time, to me at least, has nothing to do with quality or influence or distribution or the money you can make, but more with existing platforms. If you already are a super influential YouTuber, or let's say a business owner with millions of clients, it's very, very easy to get a traditional book deal, whether you're a writer or not, because what publishers, of course, are looking out for is people with existing platforms. So certainly that's the way to go. Now, if you're, let's say, somebody that's starting out in their own personal business, you can very confidently self-publish or try a hybrid publishing model, and that can be very successful too. There is far more stigma now about that than there was in the past, and you can put out something that is extremely high in quality. The other important thing to bear in mind is that no matter how you publish, if you are with a traditional publishing house or if you're doing it on your own, marketing your book is really up to you. Nobody's going to do it for you, and you also have to keep that in mind if you believe that that's something that is going to be important for your brand, your business, and your book. Now, on the other hand, maybe that's not the reason you're interested in writing a book. Maybe you want to write one for fun, or for your children, or for your small circle of friends, or because you want to do something that's outside of your everyday life. Maybe you want to write poetry. Maybe you want to explore historical fiction or romance novels. Who knows, right? It can be a nice distraction from your everyday life. It can even serve a therapeutic purpose if you're describing experiences or challenges that you might have overcome. And I think it's something that people should give a little thought to. It's very helpful for businesses, and I've seen it happen. And it's also very therapeutic for the writer, as I've also seen it happen.
Okay, yeah. So for everybody listening, if it wasn't top of your list, just have a think about it. You know, there's lots of good reasons there that Sandy's given us as to, you know, why wouldn't you? If it's down to time, you can make adjustments and make time for it. Take it as a hobby. Let that be your hobby for the foreseeable future till you get to the point where, you know, you can make it go further than that. So I love that. So we've been inspired to increase our self-confidence. We've also been kind of helped to reshape the way we look at potentially bad things. We can flip it around and see positives in it. And also, been encouraged to think about writing a book for lots of different reasons. So thank you, Sandy. Time is kind of passed us by now, but it's been a really good investment of, I would say, your time and certainly my listening time. I'm careful about who I listen to, but this has been a really good experience for me as well. So your book's available on Amazon. Is that the best place if people want to grab a copy? Is that the best place? Not that we're promoting Amazon because we don't make money from that, but it's a really good platform for accessibility wise, isn't it?
I agree. I really like all booksellers, so I have it available everywhere, Trevor. It's on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com. You can buy it on Target.com, Walmart eBooks. I've even seen it on eBooks Australia, so it's really everywhere. And interestingly enough, I also have signed copies available through the website of that company that I was mentioning that I sometimes work with, which is heartofhollywoodmagazine.com. And at this time, that company and I are working on something else. We are about to launch a 10-episode video series for us to get to know people that have overcome challenges, be it in business, as to health, as to romance, as to any aspect of life. And also on that same website, your listeners can find information about that project. And if they would care to submit their story, that would be fantastic.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So Heart for Hollywood, is that what you said?
Heartofhollywoodmagazine.com.
Okay, yeah, no, that's good. There should be a link below wherever you're listening to this. What's the best way for people to reach out to you if they want to, as well as getting the book, if they want to kind of either star in the video thing, they can go to Heart of Hollywood. But is there where are you on social media that people would find you best?
Well, if anybody would care to join us on Instagram, we're quite easy to find at choosetoprevail.com. Also, there's a Facebook group. I'm sorry, not .com, just at Choose to Prevail on Instagram. And also, if they prefer to use Facebook, there's also a Choose to Prevail Facebook group. Now, if anybody would care for a free download of the music that was composed especially for the book, inspired by the book, I would be more than happy to send them that music. It's original rock music. Be advised, it's very intense, but we believe that it builds confidence. It's just very upbeat. It's very, heart pounding, and it gets people in a very, let's say, confident frame of mind. If you would care for that music, just drop us an email at Sandy R as in Rose, S as in Sam, at gmail.com, and we will be happy to send you an audio file of the music.
Okay, great. That's brilliant. Well done. Thank you for all of that. And thanks again for sharing some of your expertise and insights that can help us kind of just navigate life better, navigate challenges better. And this time next year, we may all be budding authors as well. It all started when we listened to Sandy. So that's that's brilliant. Thank you for that. And just as we close up, for everybody listening, take some action. So whether you might not draft a manuscript tonight, but just think through the different things that we've been speaking about. Where can you increase your self-confidence? Where is it that you're maybe needing to redefine something that you're currently going through? I realize as well that just how we define things makes such a difference. Just a little tweak in our definition of things can just open up a whole new perspective and how we then respond to it. So yes, lots that you can put into practice. So be proactive, stay positive, and we will catch you on the next episode. Thanks very much. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Yeukai Business Show. We will be back to bring you more episodes with success stories and advice straight from the experts. Want more? Check out www.yeukai.businessshow.com. Get your free trial of our virtual assistant service today. Just visit www.worldoutsourcingsolutions.com. Quote WOS18 or send us an email at support@worldoutsourcingsolutions.com.